Hey everyone, first things first, before we get into the episode, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone that has supported the podcast so far, that has liked the videos, commented, subscribed, all that kind of good stuff. But there's a huge amount of you that aren't following on Spotify, Apple, or subscribed on YouTube. So please do that so you don't miss out on an episode. Also on LinkedIn, we've got the monthly newsletter that is blowing up, and it just means that you won't be able to miss out on any of the download from every episode, or perhaps you just want to go back through and see what was that episode about, is that something I want to go and listen to, etc. So go and do that. The final thing before we do get into the episode, from April when this video comes out, I'm taking on 10 recruiters on an exclusive basis. I've already got 5 recruiters that have taken up, so 50% of the spaces are still available. So if you are a recruiter that is serious and really ambitious, wants to double your billings, master your BD processes, reach out, because I've got a new coaching package that I'll be talking about a lot on LinkedIn. So reach out to me directly. That's enough from me. Let's get into the episode. Hello everybody and welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast with your host Charles Kiriakou. Today I'm joined by Helen Plumridge, who is the founder of Hyper Consulting and a recruitment entrepreneur turned mentor leader coach. Helen, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. How are you?
I'm really good, apart from some technical issues this morning. It's really good to be on.
Yeah, we were supposed to be recording about 25 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And we chose to do the podcast Monday morning, so yeah, maybe that's a lesson for both of us.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, thank you very much for joining the show, Helen. For people that may or may not know who you are, give us a little bit of an intro to you, your background, and what you're currently doing at the minute.
Yeah, so as you've kindly introed me, Charles, my name's Helen Plumridge, Hyper Consulting, so it's a home for female founders. I started in recruitment about 22 years ago, fell into it, loved it from the start. So had my career, worked in a corporate and an independent, and I think working in the independent gave me a bit of a taste of, okay, this is really interesting, maybe I could do this for myself, which is a lot of people tend to do. Went out on my own after having a sort of young family, and grew my business from scratch in my kids' toy room, right through to building a mainly all-female team, right through to getting investment from a recruitment entrepreneur, which some people might be familiar with. Did that for 2 or 3 years and then exited the business in 2023. And it was actually that year that I started listening to someone called Lisa Johnson, who's an online strategist, and I just thought, crikey, I could adapt this to the recruitment world, and that's where I've sort of had the idea of setting up Hyper Consulting. So it's coaching, mentoring, community for female founders, and my dream is to grow it globally.
Nice.
The biggest community of female founders across the globe. Just launched a Facebook group as well, so building that. So yeah, it's
Nice.
good fun, but it still comes with the caveat that I still do recruitment as well. So I still do a number of senior searches throughout the year. Still got a small portfolio client, so still on the tools.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. You have to be a certain type of person to be in this industry for that amount of time, transition into coaching and still do a bit of recruitment on the side.
Yeah. Love it. I still love recruitment. I've got people on interview today. I still love that whole process.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly the type of person that I love having on the show, because I love this industry. I'm not necessarily as on the tools in terms of doing recruitment per se, but I
Yeah.
still use everything that I've learned in recruitment to do what I do in the coaching world, right? The active listening, the questioning, the business development, the marketing, everything. I still use it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to having this conversation, Helen. So for people tuning into the show, we've got quite a few topics that we're going to run through today. Before we actually clicked record, I said to Helen, because one of the topics we talk about, obviously being a mainly sort of female coach, essentially, is that out of every guest that I've had on the show, and I looked at the analytics on Spotify, I don't know about YouTube and Apple, but the analytics on the show at the moment are like 60-40 splits between male and female, which isn't too bad, seeing as, like, if you think about how many men versus women there are in the industry, I'd say there's probably a lot more men that are in the industry. And the one thing I said to Helen before we clicked record was, out of all the guests I've had on the show so far, and I've had quite a few women on, maybe like 2 or 3 women, maybe 4 max, have actually directly messaged me saying, hey, I've seen your podcast, can I come on the show? Whereas, like I've had so many men, and also I've actually turned down a lot of men who have no recruitment experience, but they have a team of people. They've got 60,000 followers on Instagram, or 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. They have nothing to do with recruitment. Like I don't want you on the podcast yet, but the men just have no, like, nothing stopping them from saying, "Hey, can I come on your podcast?" I just find it crazy.
It is mad. It is I think it is a generational and societal thing. There was an incident recently with the Recruitment Expo
Mm.
happening in March. Louise Triant, who coordinates it all,
Hmm.
amazing. She put out a post for speakers, and within a couple of days, she'd had 38 applications, and only 5 of them were women. And she actually put a post out about it because she just couldn't believe it.
I remember seeing this.
Yeah, do you remember seeing that?
Yeah.
And it's the same for starting your own business. If you
Mm.
think, actually, it's 50-50 in the industry, Charles. So in employed recruiter land,
Hmm.
50-50 split between male and female, but only 20% of women set their own recruitment business up.
Oh wow. Why do you think that? Because my wife and I always speak about, like, this type of thing. Why in the UK specifically, right? Because the majority of our listeners are in the UK, but in the UK specifically, there's not, you don't really hear as many women going, right, okay, I'm going to have children and set up a business, or I'm going to do this and set up a business. Whereas I know so many men through my network, like, forget my friendship circle that predominantly they just work 9 to 5 jobs, but so many men in my network are always talking about, they want to have kids, but they're always going to set up a business. They're going to do consulting, they're going to do freelance, they're going to create this product. Why is there such a disconnect there, do you think?
Or host of reasons. I mean, some of it is, a big part of it is confidence.
Hmm.
It really is. It's that kind of barrier to not really believing in yourself enough to
Mm.
actually go for it.
Makes
As
sense.
you do need that nudge. I think everyone needs that nudge into setting up
Hmm.
their own business from someone either in your network or in your family. But for women, I think there is more risk involved, and yeah, unfortunately, it is lifestyle circumstances as
Mm.
well, where you are in your journey, whether you're having kids, not having kids, you're a dog mum, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Some of it's stage of life. Some of it's financially driven,
Hmm.
and again, you could argue that we still have this kind of tradition that the guys are the major breadwinners.
Yeah.
Not always the case. There are lots of women that are the major breadwinners themselves, but there is that as well. So it's an even bigger risk for
Yeah.
now to take if she's a single parent, etc. So I think there are more factors keeping women from starting their own business than there are the guys,
Mm.
really.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's a shame, but I'm here to try and change that, Charles.
Yeah, I know, I love that, and yeah, I think because I've had quite a few women on the podcast that I either are or are not mothers, but that predominantly either everyone that I speak to is either a CEO or a founder of their own business, right? And there's two things that constantly come up, because I'm quite passionate about this conversation. I mean, fingers crossed, touch wood, we're expecting a daughter in summer, and when she grows up, I want her to be able to have the same
Yes.
opportunities and all the rest of it, but just whatever she wants to do, not like you should do this because this, you know what I mean? Anyway, but there's two sort of things that pop up. There's one that you have this societal thing, and you and I spoke about this when we first got on the phone, that for hundreds and hundreds of years, like, women have been told you're only supposed to do this one thing, raise children, stay at home, make the house look nice, blah 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 blah. We've got to this position now in society where it's like there is nothing that a woman can't do that a man can do in business. I'm saying, not like athletics or anything like that, but that you can be just as successful in recruitment as a woman. And I would even argue in 2025 you might even have more significant advantages than your male counterparts, because it's so saturated with men. You're immediately differentiating yourself if you have a feminine voice, right? So my thing is now that society is again, we've still got some work to do, but we've got to a position now where it is the level playing field is so much more equal than what it was
Mm.
50, 60 to 100 years ago, like when my mum was back in work, right? What can women do? And it would be interesting to hear from yourself, who's working with these women. What can women do more intrinsically? So forget the things that are out of our control. What can women do to go, right, okay, I need to get more confidence. I need to apply for jobs, even if I'm not 50% right for it, or I've got a bit of savings now. I want to set up a business, but I don't feel like I can. What can women do intrinsically to help them with those types of things, do you think?
Such a big question, that.
And apologies, I went on a bit of a rant there, but you can tell I'm quite passionate about the topic.
Yeah, no, and that's great. That's great. Because it's not men versus women. We're all in this
Yeah,
together,
of course.
one another, and you're here, on your platform to support, women and men out there in the industry. I think I'm just going to go back to that confidence
Hmm.
in self issue, and I still see it with women that have started their own recruitment business.
Mm.
Time and time again, you find a problem in their business, and it might be, obviously, we talked about business development being a
Hmm.
major challenge, but it might be, issues with not having enough time around family life, etc. It might be to do with pitching or scaling. And often
Hmm.
when you dig into the issue, 9 times out of 10, it's a confidence issue that's behind it.
Mm.
Um, so, and in that respect, if that is the case, then it's very much about basically working on your mindset as
Mm.
regularly as you can, because I think you don't just get confidence from somewhere. It is like a muscle. We can relate this to exercise, can't we?
Yes.
We both love exercise,
Yeah.
but I can see it, but with myself, I'm training for an Ironman in June, and I'm not hoping to gain the fitness for it. I'm working on it every single day of the week, and it's the same with mindset. You do need to find the tools and strategies that are going to help you
Mm.
with that. And whether it is everything from meditation to exercise to network to journaling, whatever it is, it's really important to work on you. There's another quote from I don't know if you know Jim Rohn. Have you heard of
You
Jim
sent
Rohn?
me his book, I'm pretty sure, or something, or his YouTube channel, or something like that. But yeah, go on, carry on.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was Russell Brunson actually.
Oh, I've got the
Yeah,
names mixed up.
obviously looked at it then, Charles. No, Jim Rohn was the person actually gave Tony Robbins a lot of
Okay.
expertise. He started with him. He was his guru, and Jim Rowan's got this quote which I love, and it's, if you work, let me get this right. If you work if you work on your business, you'll make a living, but if you work on yourself, you can make a fortune. A
Mm.
lot of people are working hard on their businesses, but they're not working on themselves, and it's the self-development that's going to help you
Yeah.
develop. So if I was going to say one thing to capitalize all of that massive
Hmm.
question, where do you even start? It's work on you first, because once you've done that, if you're a recruiter out there thinking I might start my own business, and this is the guys and girls, um, perhaps what's holding you back from it is just taking that leap of faith. So work on you, and then the rest will follow.
That is such a phenomenal answer, and as a bloke as well, by the way, that actually hit home for me because I wanted to set my coaching business up probably like, what was it, summer 2023 maybe, I can't remember when it was specifically, but I wanted to set my business up. I just didn't have the confidence, Helen. I just
Mm.
didn't. I've been working on myself. I've been doing I know people think it's the ice bath wanker type thing, but I've been doing that every morning. It's horrible, but I do it because it's difficult. I do difficult things. I've done loads of things out of my comfort zone and all the rest of it. But for some reason, I don't know what it is, the idea of setting up a business, going on LinkedIn and going, this is me, I'm doing my coaching business alone, not having a marketing team, not having an MD to tell you, right, what's your day plan, doing all of that, and then like knowing that if I don't make any money for a few months, I can't pay my mortgage, and I've got babe on the way. I didn't have the confidence initially. So I what you said earlier about sometimes needing that little nudge, my little nudge was being made redundant. If I wasn't made redundant, I would have stayed in that miserable job that I hated. Do you know what I'm trying to say? But I think it's really interesting what you say about just focus on yourself, like build your confidence, work on your mindset, and all these different types of things. Whether you're a man or a woman, I think it's like it interchanges into both of them. But I think especially, Helen, I work with a lot of female recruiters, and I
Mm.
sit down with them, and as soon as we start a call coaching session, you can just see their nerves and like the confidence level. They're just second guessing everything they're saying. That their male counterparts, more often than not, no offense to the guys that I work with, you're worse than the girls. The girls are smarter in their approach, but the blokes just have this almost like caveman confidence and just plow through. And most of the time, the clients, if they mess up on a few things, the client, they don't latch onto it because the caveman like bloke approach is, I've mispronounced it. Oh, well, I'm not the expert. You educate me, Mr. Client. The client goes, oh, all right. Whereas the girl will overanalyze things and be like, oh, I've got that wrong. I'm so sorry. That. And the client goes, oh, yeah, you don't sound very confident. So I'm not going to work with you. So it's such an interesting contrast, I find.
100%. And you mentioned it earlier before we had this, the recording, that it's a bit like when men and women both apply for positions. So you see
Yeah.
this. And I recruit just in the senior market, so I
Mm.
see all the time, albeit that women have got into a leadership role are more confident, but even still their rationale will be, well, I'd be happy with that salary or package. That's a little bit of an increase from what I'm on at the moment. But
Yeah.
actually, the guys will be going, well, actually, the salary range is up to 120. So, yeah, I'm coming in at 120. No, I'm on 100 at the moment, or something like that.
Yeah.
There's still that distinction.
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
How,
100%.
how do we change it? I mean, it starts at childhood, but that's a much bigger discussion, isn't it?
Yeah, that might be above my pay grade for this recruitment podcast, but but no, I agree with you. It definitely does start from childhood. I guess something that you might be able to offer some incredible value from your expertise, though, is like I said, I work with a lot of female recruiters, right? And a lot of which this is their first job in recruitment, and maybe not. Let's face it, most recruitment businesses, they don't have training, so they're kind of just learning off the job or on the job and kind of doing as what their manager has done or whatever. But like I mentioned to you, a typical trait I've seen in a lot of female recruiters I work with is they overanalyze every situation, where they'll get on the phone and it's like, by the time you have analyzed everything, I would have made 5 phone calls. Just call them and play professionally dumb. Just like, you're not the expert in that market. Just ask the client or the candidate some questions. They'll educate you. They feel like sometimes they have to know everything before they get on the call, and that holds them back. And obviously, going back to what you said about the confidence piece. Now, you've given a few tiny little snippets around building confidence, working on mindset, but what would you say are a couple of like key things for, let's say, for like a recruiter level, maybe it's like their first job, second job, maybe somebody that is a bit overly analytical, or maybe they lack a little bit of confidence, maybe they haven't really started to work on their mindset. What are a handful of things from your perspective that could be useful to try and use to develop those things, would you say?
Mm. I mean, I think that's astounding that they're not getting the sort of formal support, although they have got you, Charles. So that's great. To your coach, definitely. Um, I think it is that, and this isn't just women, because I mean I see plenty of women that are really super confident in business development. There's someone I've been coaching with recently, and she's just absolutely amazing at business development, and she's
Yeah.
just no hold bars. She just goes for it, but she lacks confidence in other areas. But
Mm.
I think for anyone sort of starting out in their early years, it is you've got to get into your mindset that this is the long haul. This isn't
Mm.
just a job that you're gonna just pick up just like that. Just it is a bit of an art, recruitment, and there's so many different layers to it. And I think we learn something new every day, don't we? I
100%.
I still do, because the industry is developing all the time, business is developing. So I think first of all, it's realizing that this is it's a long game, that it's going to take a while for you to get really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
6 months to a year is really early days in terms of learning the tools. And you do learn on the job. That
Mm-hmm.
is, although it is that type of business where you might not know. I mean, I remember when I first started, where I was recruiting anything from, legal sort of, conveyancing secretaries right through to construction managers. It was Blue Arrow, and we
Oh,
recruited
wow.
pretty much anything,
Yeah.
which, there wasn't really particular strategy to it. And I didn't have a clue what conveyancing was, didn't know what probate
Mm.
was, litigation, didn't have a clue. But I think the beauty is you do learn it on the job. And I think business development, you are learning stuff all the time. And I
Yeah.
think if you approach it, that don't approach it from a, oh God, I've got to win this piece of business point of view, win it from
Mm.
a curiosity point of view, in that
It's great
you're
advice.
you're reaching out to a business. you're finding out about them, be interested in them and what they do, and actually find out more about their culture and all the kind of broader stuff within the business, because that's a bigger conversation to be having with whether it's an HR director or MD. And on that note, I would be targeting senior decision makers within the business and perhaps not HR.
Yeah.
Sorry, HR people. I've got lots
No, sorry.
of HR friends. Sorry. Um, but it's that the gatekeepers aren't gonna. You're not gonna have that broader conversation
Yeah.
necessarily with them unless they're chief people officer or something like that. Again, I'm probably doing them a disservice there. But again, you're going to get more out of contacting those key decision makers. You need to be really well structured and planned. You need to be consistent every single day. And if you're doing it every single day, actually, you get to a point where it's just daily diet,
Yeah.
and therefore it just becomes what you do, and it doesn't become this thing anymore. So be prepared to fail a bit until you just get good and you're doing it regularly, and just
Yeah.
throw yourself into it.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with someone just saying I'm not interested, or
Mm.
but they might be more interested next time. So just keep them
Mm.
warm and try them again, type thing. I mean, there's so many different things, isn't there? But
Yeah.
some of it's confidence and mindset, some of it's knowing it's a long-term game, some of it's being really planned and organised, and some of it's just taking action,
Yeah.
doing it regularly every single day, because it's easy to push it away and go,
Very much so. Yeah.
challenge, that's painful, I won't do that because I've got vacancies to service, etc.
Yeah. Those are some really good points. And I want to just mention something as well, because someone might have listened to what I said there and be like, just Charles think every single female is just overly analytical and just, do you know what I mean? No, it's not what I'm saying. Because I've actually worked with some female recruiters since I set my own business up that have just been like, sometimes you just listen to them on the phone or you see their email and you go, that's just phenomenal. Like, I would never have even thought about doing that. Do you know what I mean? So it's not all of them. It's just more of a case that I would say in the last 6 to 9 months where I've been meeting a lot of new businesses. And what I do sometimes is like a taster session or a meet and greet with the recruiters, and I get a chance to know like personality profiles, what kind of personality they are, what their learning style is and stuff. And I always ask them, so what would you find most challenging day to day or week to week? And the commonalities between the blokes and the females are very similar. Like most of the guys are just all over the place, don't have a strategy, that they're quite hard workers. They like to work hard. And again, that the average, again, this is just anecdotal, what I've seen doing my own business. The females are typically quite over analytical, and they don't want to do oftentimes they don't want to do stuff in front of their male counterparts because they're afraid that they might be taking the mick out of if they do something wrong. Put my hands up. I used to be that guy as well. I used to be that person that would just not want to do things in front of people because I worked alongside people that, oh, you're quite posh on the phone, aren't you? And you're like, right, great. I'm never making a BD call ever again now. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I had no confidence. It took me so long to find that confidence inside of me. But, I've mentioned this quite a few times on the podcast that the reason why this conversation fascinates me so much, but the difference between men and women, my mum is not an atypical woman. She's a very masculine, she's got very masculine energy. She would apply for a job if she was 5% right. She set up multiple businesses. Do you know what I mean? So she's very, very different in that respect.
Alpha.
Dominant. Yeah, very much so. Like she's heavily disabled, but if someone like cut her up in traffic, she would get out and throw fists. And I'm like, if she slaps me, she's got osteoporosis, she'll break her hand. But she still will raise her hand to me. We're like, get back in your box. I'm like, you're fucking crazy. So it's probably why my brother and I have just been like, right, we have to like be quite high achieving and ambitious, and there's nothing that can stop us besides our own self. I think that all comes from my mum, to be fair. Like, which is what you said about like the upbringing and stuff. I think that's where it comes from.
Well, I don't know if you. Well, you probably do know this, but you either lead with male or female energy, and you can be a guy leading with female energy and a girl
Yeah,
with male energy. So that sounds like your mum leads with male energy, I would say. I mean, I know
I
I
would
do.
probably say so.
Yeah. So I don't kind of get too flustered about stuff. I don't get too emotional about stuff, etc. But I mean, you can't change that. You can't go over to the other
Yeah.
side. Yeah, some of it does come from your roots. Some of it does come from childhood in terms of maybe you were treated differently, you know, from the male female point of view. So it's just overcoming really. I mean, I do agree with you to a certain extent on that kind of analytical, maybe overthinking it. I think sometimes that's about that perfectionism of getting it right first time.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to be prepared to just, you know, if it doesn't work out or you make a mistake, just to go, oh, I'm going to dust myself off and
Yeah.
conquer it. But I do think that resilience is built up over time. You know, we all did start in recruitment and had this amazing resilience to us. You know, you do get that over time. If you're a seasoned recruiter, you find that we're all quite made of Teflon later on in life. It's
Yeah.
just when people, you know, have enough, I guess, sticking power, staying power, to to build a career in recruitment. You know,
Yeah. Do you know what I wouldn't even necessarily say so recently, but something that I've done over the years actually, and this goes for men and women. I don't like the term homework, but I give people after a coaching session like a non-recruitment home activity, basically. And when I work, and this is probably the same with yourself, right? People that are very ambitious but that lack that self-confidence, and they're like, I want to be more confident. And I always give the not the story, but I explain to them that growing up, I was never confident. I was very quiet. I mean, if you got to know me, I was very loud and very chatty. But when it came to strangers and stuff, just really quiet, very in myself, always underweight, like didn't have any self esteem, didn't like the way I looked, all that type of stuff. And then probably from like the age of 23 is when, like most people, you have that kind of light bulb moment and go, I don't have to be like this. I've chose to be like this. I can actually be who I want to be, and there's just things I need to put in place to become that. Like the exercise analogy. If you want to be bigger, go and lift weights and eat more food. If you want to be slimmer, burn more calories, consume less calories. It's that type of mentality. So, you know, I read loads of personal development books, went on loads of courses. I went and sought out mentors and all the rest of it. And then through the years of learning, and also the repetition of the tough job that is recruitment, of constantly being rejected and all the rest of it, you build up this callus in your mind, and you just all of a sudden, not like it's an overnight thing because it's all these little tiny things, but you kind of wake up one day and you're like, huh, I don't feel anxious anymore about the things that would normally feel anxious, like picking up the phone to a VP of sales, for example. I don't feel anxious about that anymore. Having a conversation with the CEO and they're saying we need to do a European team build, but we don't know how to do it. Now I have the confidence to say this is what you need to be doing. And it just comes from that repetition, doing the basics, doing those things every single day. And like what you've said numerous times, find what works for you and work on yourself. It could be running. If you hate running, then don't fucking run unless it's you're just doing it purely because you want to do a difficult thing. But do rowing or just swim or do something that you kind of find relatively enjoyable that's hard, and do that. And if you keep doing that, you'll have like this almost backlog of stuff that you've done that you can look back and go, fuck me, look how far I've come. Look how much I've improved myself.
yeah, I love that. I mean, that goes back to your 1% analogy, though, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It is those. It's nothing big. There's not a transformation like that, or you know, a kind of improvement. It's not going to happen overnight. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to be in it in the long term to know that you just got to keep working on it, and it is going to get better. I'll add something to the confidence scenario as well, Charles. And this is for not just for, obviously you mentioned recruiters, but I'm mainly focused on women starting their own recruitment business. Is I think now there is a big confidence issue because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are working from home, and there's a lot of solopreneurs out there. And
Mm.
even if you do have a small team, you might all be working remotely. And so you're not getting feedback from people or bounce off from people
Mm.
every single minute of the day if you were in the office. You're obviously out there on the social media seeing all the really big success stories from other
Mm-hmm.
people, because that's what people post on there. And I think confidence has waned quite a bit since we've had this scenario. So again, I think it's almost like you need to work even harder to counteract that, especially if you're spending a long period of time on your own, or long periods of your week on your own. So I think that's another big factor now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what would you say to combat that? Because I've definitely struggled with just working at home by myself, like trying to create content. Like I put a post up, or sorry, I've messaged in a group chat I'm in, that I was just like spiraling out of control because I'm trying to build this like business development course, or like redesign it, redefine it. And because you don't have that feedback, you can't just go to the water cooler and go like, I'm struggling with this thing. What would you do? Like, bless her, my wife, she works in the civil service. She's not a business minded person whatsoever, bless her. But like, that type of conversation with her is totally different. It's where are we going to go take the dog for a walk? It's different. Sometimes you need like another person to bounce ideas off of. So for me, it was just like messaging in that WhatsApp group and being like, please, someone help me. I'm terrible at asking for help. And I don't know whether that's just a typical male trait, but I know a lot of male friends of mine just don't ask for help until one day it's just too late. But like, what would you say for someone that is working from home, that is struggling with that? Like, what's your advice for that person?
Yeah, and I think we all feel like that from time to time when
Mm-hmm.
they're running their own businesses. You do have days where you just think, "Oh, I've got, I am really positive about my business, but just
Yeah, yeah.
contact." Um, I think it's knowing that there are loads of other people in your boat, because
Mm.
there's everyone else. You kind of think everyone else is enjoying themselves and having a great time, and their business is
Yeah,
doing really well.
yeah.
So it's kind of that, but that, I don't think that's enough. I think it's good to know that other people are in the same boat, but I think that's where the kind of community angle
Mm.
comes in. I don't want to keep plugging my Facebook group, but I've just set up a Facebook group for female
Mm-hmm.
founders to create that community, to create that place where you can come and you can air it, ask questions, share, share knowledge,
Yeah.
etc. And yeah, meet peers that are in the same boat
Mm.
as you. So, and then I think it's also doing things every single day where you have actually got contact with people. Because if Charles, I'm in the same boat as you, creating courses, creating content,
Mm-hmm.
and some days you might just have your head down all day and you've not spoken to anyone. So I think it's kind of going, right, who could I speak to today? Who could I actually reach out to
Mm.
today? What could I record? Because I think if you do a video or something like that, that's also just that communication
Mm-hmm.
to, I know it's not to anyone, but when you're putting it out and
Yeah.
getting comments and feedback and things like that, that's a really good thing. And then doing some co-working. Again, there's so many different co-working spaces, or find your network, your community where you can go and co-work with people. Something I also find really useful is going for like a weekly or every other week walk with someone that's in my peer group, and we'll just air everything.
That's a
We'll
really
walk
good idea.
Yeah, we just walk around the forest or something like that, and just
Nice.
literally put the world to rights for
Nice.
a couple of hours, and then yeah, it's really cathartic.
Yeah, no, I love that. I might actually not steal the idea, but do more of that, because my dog, as we're recording this end of Feb, he's like just turned 9 months old. So 9-month-old puppy, you can't take him out for much longer than an hour because their joints are still developing and stuff. But we're now like starting to take him to the woods and stuff. And I know quite a few people in the industry that live in and around Wollongong City. So that's actually a phenomenal idea to kind of kill two birds with one stone, go for a nice long dog walk, but then just bring a couple of other recruiters or solo entrepreneurs down with me. So yeah, I'm going to take, that's my little 1% already. We've not even got to the 1% question yet, Helen, so thank you very much.
And then you can post about it,
Yeah.
repurpose it, Charles.
Love it. Well, look, why don't we sort of switch angles a little bit, because we've spent the first half of this talking about like the female entrepreneurship and like some tips and advice and stuff, and I think you've given a tremendous amount of value for listeners on that. And I think it was yourself actually, Helen, correct me if I'm wrong, where I spoke to you. I think it was actually, and I said about some of the podcasts I've done, I've not titled them like female CEO who's got like children and stuff like that. I was actually going to put a post out about this to see like what people's thoughts were on, using that in headlines, because I know some people find it a bit. Again, you can't please everyone, right? Some people find it a bit cringe, and it's just like you don't need to use like their gender. Some people are like, well, if I see female CEO and I'm a female, I'm more likely to listen to it. So yeah, I'm still kind of like pondering what I'm going to do in that respect.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong. You're going to please some people,
Yeah.
and it's not. I think my example back to you, because I think you mentioned there was a lady that had 4 kids
Mm.
and she
She
managed
was
to
a CEO. Yeah, yeah.
go. I do think that is a story. I think that's the story.
Hmm.
Female CEO, 4 children, has managed to do this. I think that's the
Yeah,
definite. So I think it's really what's the story, and whether is it
yeah,
relevant to the actual story. I mean, for me, I my focus is female founders of recruitment agencies,
of course.
solo to sub 5. So I'm quite happy to
Mm.
quite happy to be named, and I'm unapologetic about it as well, because as I said, with only 20% of recruitment agencies owned by women,
Hmm.
I want to see that number close the gap, with the guys out there. So we get less investment. We only get 1%. Only 1% of women get investment backed.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, in business generally, that's not just recruitment. That's in
Yeah.
business really, mainly because it is male dominated in the investment world. So
Mm.
there's factors like that. So those are the reasons for me why I'm unapologetic about it, and you know, it is that kind of yeah, not trying to be sexist at all, not trying to
Yeah.
guys up at all, not having that conversation. So
Yeah. No, fair play. Do you know what? Before I ask you about the next topic, the next question, one thing I have noticed a little bit less of on my LinkedIn, because I want to say maybe just before we went into the pandemic, there was a few people on LinkedIn that kind of sparked this like gender war, and I always used to find it very
mm,
baffling, like battle of the sexes. I'm like, what do you mean battle of the sexes, battle of the genders? That for me is like a really like archaic mindset, and I just think a redundant conversation because society wouldn't flourish with just men or just women. You need men and women. You need masculine and feminine energy. Like you need both of them. We both support each other so well.
mm,
Do you know what I'm trying to say? So like when I see a lot less of it now, which I'm very grateful for because it was bloody exhausting of just like
mm.
you just get the extremists on both sides. You get men that are just like women need to do this, and women that are like men are can't do that. And it's just I just found that so exhausting. I don't. Luckily, I don't know whether it's just my algorithm. I just don't really see that much of it anymore.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, to be honest, I haven't seen anything like that for for a while, thankfully.
Mm, yeah.
Probably best to stay away with it. Sort of vote with your feet.
Yeah. Honestly, I was just realizing yesterday that it's been like by the time this episode comes out, it'll be like 5 years since we went into the pandemic or we went into lockdown. By the way, how bloody odd is that?
And we still mention it every single day, pretty much, don't we? We still talk about.
I know it's just crazy. It is crazy. But you know what? That's actually a relatively good segue because we spoke about one of the topics we're going to talk about is ditching the traditional recruitment model and building a business on your own terms. And for people listening, I said like I've read this topic out because Helen sent me a bunch of topics, which was very very good of her. And I was like, what do you mean by ditch the traditional recruitment model or building a business with your own terms? And the reason why I said that's quite a good like segue is that I think post COVID, a lot of people kind of realized that maybe this hustling and bustling and like being a millionaire and all the rest of it and scaling a business to 100 employees and opening an office here there and everywhere, maybe that isn't for everyone. Maybe you can prioritize happiness but still earn enough money to be comfortable and get the things that you want and go to the places that you want. But yeah, why don't you just sort of explain to people what you mean about ditching the traditional recruitment method and building a business on your own terms? What do you specifically mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think being big doesn't necessarily mean beautiful or profitable. Um, and there's still so much talk. This is what comes from my algorithm, Charles.
Hmm.
Is seven-figure brigade. We need
Right. Yeah.
scale and exit. That's what success is in recruitment. Of course, you just want to do that. That's what success is. And I was caught up in that myself when I was
Hmm.
running my own business, which is why I got an investment backing. I think the reality is something different, and actually making it really profitable is a really really tough. And actually having more people in your business makes it really really tough as well.
Yeah.
You move further away from actually why you set it up, to, firefighting a lot of the time. And yeah, it's really that profit margin
Hmm.
becomes, tightened. Plus, if you get other people involved in your business, if you get investors, um, that can change the dynamic for you as
Mm.
well. So, but that's, I guess, another story, really. So, really, reconfiguring what this looks like is just that leaner idea of a business, and
Mm.
we can do this more than we've ever been able to do, as you've mentioned, because most people are working from home. We're not going to go and get an office just to show that we're successful.
Hmm.
The costs can be very, very low. Setting up your own recruitment business can be you can do it on really, very lean perspective, really short. Oh, I've got my words muddled up there. I'm sure you edit that out. So it's thinking, well, actually, I'm really good at this. I'm a really good biller. Do I actually need to have other billers in my business?
Mm.
Actually, could I just, you know, bring in VA help? Could I bring in resourcing help? Could I bring in marketing help that's just outsourced? And I'm not spending lots of money, loads of overheads. I don't have to deal with the kind of staff issues.
Yeah.
I could actually be more like a 750, £1 million biller just on my own, really profitable, but I don't have all the headaches of having a bigger business.
Mm.
I guess that's reality for some, like a small section. Most people who set up their own recruitment business, you're probably either going to stay on your own, or you're going to have one or two or three in your team.
Mm.
And that's you. The better way of doing it is to either extract more money or more profit out of the people that are working in your business who
Yeah.
have strategy, um, focusing on things like retained search in your business,
Hmm.
focusing on the way you pitch it, focusing on your niche, focusing on having a really good ideal client that you're then going to replicate throughout your business. So having kind of methods, systems and processes that really, really work, and making it really lean and really like a well-oiled machine.
Mm.
I think a lot of people just, as I said, just make the mistake of thinking, right, okay, I need to hire a biller, and I need to keep bill it, need to keep adding
Yeah.
to my team.
Mm.
I think there's so many ways of running a recruitment business now. And that's, this year, as they've said, is actually the year of the lean recruitment agency,
Yeah.
the small independent.
Mm.
That's where a lot of, as you said, a lot of people want to be. They just want a really nice, profitable business where they can also have work-life balance, where
Hmm.
they also finish early on a Friday, etc. Enjoy what they're doing and not have all the stress associated with that kind of the complexity of
Yeah.
business.
100%.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I've noticed, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. The first thing is, and again, this is so common, right? Because I'm sure you'll get this if you're coaching people. I go and meet a recruitment business, and I say, tell me about your mission, your vision for the business. Yeah, we're going to scale the business and we're going to sell. Okay, great. Like that's almost like the thing that we've been indoctrinated into in the recruitment industry, that you set up a business to grow, scale, and sell. And the other thing is that they set up a recruitment business with like this intention of, if I set this recruitment business up, it means that in the next couple of years I can be off the tools. I'll have people on the tools instead. But I've seen historically those types of businesses can almost do worse when they've got the person that's been doing that market for 10, 15 years with all these relationships and everything, suddenly click, they're off the tools, and now they're like just doing operational stuff. And it's like, I mean, I'm no expert here, but if you've got somebody in the business with that level of experience and all those contacts, I mean, sure, if they don't want to be like grinding like what we did when we were first in the industry every single day until 9 p.m. trying to find candidates and building our list and stuff, but if you've got all that experience, like, isn't there a better way to kind of like utilize that as opposed to just immediately going off the tools after the first couple of years?
Yeah, a lot of the time you are the business, you're the person that was really good in your employed job, and that's why you've set your own business up, and that's who clients relate to. With
Mm.
my brand, clients would always come back to me if there was a problem, issue. It would always be, oh, we've got this new campaign, we're going to hire 10 people. They would always come to me first. So I think you should never lose sight of that. That's
Hmm.
you are the heart of your business, and you're dead right. If you can if you can build 20k a month and you're just used to doing that, and actually arguably it's easier than it's ever been if you're really experienced, because recruitment's the easiest part of running a business. Well, I think it is. I always used to say the recruitment bit's the easy bit, running a business isn't.
Yeah.
Having staff is not the easiest bit at all. Actually, recruitment's
Yeah.
a joy because it's just so much easier. So why would you negate that sort of revenue coming into your business? Because that's kind of, you can put that down as pure profit effectively.
Mm.
So yeah, so I think you've got to find ways of maximizing your skills and maybe just taking away all the other stuff from you, some of the operational stuff, some of the marketing, some of the the finance, and even building someone up in the team if you've got a bigger team to be that kind of go-to on a day-to-day basis for line management.
Yeah. Yeah.
Effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree, and one of my first ever clients, actually, they had two senior heads in the business, one of which was better with candidates, one was better with clients. The one that was better with candidates was also had quite a keen eye for the operational type of stuff, so tracking data and making sure the database was right. And it's like my advice to the founder of that business was, if that person has a keen interest in like the analytical aspect of the business and the operational side of the business as a startup, that's for you, that's a dream, because not many recruiters are interested in things like data and the how the business actually runs, which, like you just perfectly articulated, that's actually one of the most difficult parts of recruitment business. It's not just the recruitment, it's actually how the business is running and flourishing. So I said, why don't you just not push the person, but like slowly just give them little bits of responsibility when it comes to the operation side of things. And for the person that was better on the sales side, maybe they could be someone, maybe not as an actual manager or like just an actual manager, just someone that's a leader within the business, of come with me to the meetings and watch me pitch retained. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So that person is essentially in charge of solely bringing on retained business for the company and then farming that out to resources. And that was kind of the idea for that business.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, one of my best hires, hands down, was Paula, and she was a non-biller. She was my executive search consultant. She'd been a recruiter previously, and she'd been an account manager in a different
Mm-hmm.
life. And so she did, we worked so well together, and we actually doubled our retained work in 1 year, the year that she started. So it kind of doubled our turnover, doubled the amount that we were doing. And she would do, all the fulfillment, all the resourcing, all the
Mm-hmm.
interviewing. We'd both face it up with the client, but a lot of the time she'd have that day-to-day contact with the client.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of took away a lot of that legwork
Yeah.
from me, so to free me up to do business development, also to run the business
Mm-hmm.
and look after the team and drive the team as well, which is really, really important.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's, I mean, I know that's not a new way of thinking, that the kind of 180 idea, and maybe
Mm.
getting VA and getting resources and things
Yeah.
like that. But I think it's still, a lot of people still think in terms of, right, okay, I need to hire billers and I need to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we could probably have a whole other podcast talking about like the 180 versus 360 debate.
Oh,
But I would say just on that, I've always been quite keen on that sort of model, purely because I was much better at the BD side, and I used to find it unbelievably boring going through LinkedIn Recruiter trying to find profiles. I love speaking to candidates. I was phenomenal at qualifying candidates, building a relationship, generating leads, and CV stripping. Just finding the candidates. If I just had someone just saying, here's a list of candidates, oh, fantastic. But yeah, I find that side really, really boring. But I always said to clients I work with now that are like skeptical about this like 180 split, that like if you're struggling to get new business on, like, just like the way I've said this to people is reframe the idea of the resourcer. They're not just sourcing for jobs, they're sourcing for product. They need to be going out there and qualifying and building lists of most placeable candidates and generating leads for you and for the business development team, because they're constantly speaking to people that the eyes and the ears of the market. If you're just getting them to just source for active roles and not generate leads, or not find active candidates for you to start specking out, then I think that no wonder you're skeptical of that process working, right?
oh yeah, 100%. 100%. I think it's just working out these processes in your agency and working out what is the most effective way of doing it and what's the
Mm.
most effective use of people's time. If someone's got strength in a certain area, then yeah, utilize that
Yeah.
effectively.
100%. Well, there's only a couple more topics that, I mean, unless we've missed other things, but there's some practical strategies here that you wrote down. One of the topics that you wanted to talk about, practical strategies for revenue growth, leadership, work-life balance. I'm quite interested in the latter of that, the work-life balance part, because this will make you laugh, but it's quite sad at the same time. I had one of my best friends over on Friday, and he's working in a job that leadership has changed, everything's changed, and he's been doing this job for 10 years, very, very qualified in what he does. And leadership constantly saying, this isn't how we should be doing it. We'll do it this way. As soon as he does it their way, they lose out on the projects. They lose the business. So it's like, you need to listen to us. We're the experts, not you. And it's just created a large toxic environment. And the poor guy's doing 8 till 6, Monday to Friday in the office. So big hours, and it's not even a sales job or anything like that. It's just a standard salary. And I just sat there and I felt incredibly guilty because as a self-employed person who's essentially, the diary works for you, and on Friday, if I want, I'll just turn my laptop off at midday and go, it's fine. I'm just going to just spend time with my family or whatever. So I felt
Yeah.
quite bad. I've only just kind of got to grips with a bit of a work-life balance a year and a half into running my own thing, but tell me a little bit about, when you're coaching people, or maybe just for yourself, what are some practical strategies to help with work-life balance, work-life integration?
Well, it is a really good area, a big topic, isn't it? I've recently worked with a female founder on a number of things, actually holistic on her business, mainly focused on that kind of her focus, where she's going, her niche, business development. But we did dig into the confidence side of things, but we
Mm-hmm.
did dig in very much to her work-life balance, having a family, etc. And she found it really hard to keep the boundaries between,
Mm-hmm.
because she works from home and she's got a home office. She just found that when everyone was in the house, they just didn't appreciate or respect the boundaries
Yeah.
of working. And of course then she felt guilty because the family are here, I should be with them, but I've still got work to do, type thing. So that can be really, really hard, because when do you switch the laptop off? When
Mm-hmm.
do you stop working? If you're resourcing for a role, are you doing it in the evening whilst you're watching telly and your partner's sat there? That's
Yeah.
like, so actually we actually formulated a bit of a plan, and one of the things that she was also missing was just doing that a daily exercise. And again, she didn't want to eat into her hours,
Mm-hmm.
but she did realize that actually she's probably missing out on something that could really motivate her for the day as well.
Mm-hmm.
So just started running again and doing it three
Nice.
times a week. Yeah, just getting out first thing, either before kids have gone to school
Yeah.
or afterwards. And actually the difference between us meeting again, I could see the difference in her, and within the space of 2 or 3 weeks, having gone out for a few runs, you could tell the kind of confidence had lifted, coupled with the fact that she'd got her new strategy, sort of set in.
Nice.
Um, but that was really, really helping her keep in a sort of, I guess, a consistency throughout her week. And then the other thing was just actually having boundaries with the home office, and just literally putting a sign on the door and just saying, working,
Yeah.
it'll be finished at 4 or whatever it is. Because you're either all in or you're all out. You
Yeah.
can't do both. And we all try
Mm-hmm.
and do it, don't we? Where we're kind of, I'm still emailing my clients here, but my kids are
Yeah. The
so
boundaries part, just on that, sorry, Helen, the boundaries part is tough for a lot of people. And I find it quite challenging. And, I did a post about this on Friday about therapy. There's one thing that the therapist said to me about having stronger boundaries with parents. So we're not going to go into that, but just when you're working from home, for example, the only real boundary with my work is when I'm doing a podcast, I scream down the stairs and I'm recording a podcast, do not enter. And my wife knows, and she knows if I'm recording a podcast, she knows it's very important. The dog doesn't come upstairs and bug us or whatever. But if I'm just sat there doing PowerPoint, like I think it was Friday, I sat there for like 3 hours straight, brain was completely fried, eyes stopped working, just doing PowerPoint presentations and business strategy. And she's just knocking on the door. You'll never guess what my manager's just said. Have a look at this message on Teams. I'm like, Rosie, I love you so much, please. So what? You're not doing a call. You're not on a podcast. I'm like, I
Yeah.
know, but I'm. Do you know what I mean? And that's where I haven't set proper boundaries, and in my mind, I just find it quite difficult. So, what advice would you have for people that maybe do struggle with setting boundaries if they're working from home with partner or family or friends or whatever?
I think it's just been really definite. I think it's been really definite with your time and your hours, and just saying, look, I do, obviously, as you know, I do work from home. So when I'm working, when I'm shut away in my office, unless it's urgent, unless something's happened.
Mm,
And, I've only got, I often say that to my husband, I've only got myself to rely on in my business at the moment.
yeah.
So every hour is really, really valuable. So all the interruptions and things like that are just going to set me back. So I think it's
Hmm.
just explaining to that your loved one, and then but setting the boundaries and the timelines for yourself, and just going, right, okay, that's quite rigid, and nothing stops unless it's urgent. I do appreciate how hard it is, and I mean, I have it myself. Especially if you're working in the house versus down at the office. If someone
Hmm.
comes in, you're kind of, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
interrupted. But the kids don't really know what you're doing anyway, do they? I mean, my kids have got a clue what I do. So my husband's a hairdresser, so it's pretty obvious what he does. It's really
Yeah.
easy. He's got clients, they're in the chair, he's cutting their hair, having a nice chat, that type of thing. But they don't really know what I do. So yeah, I think you've got to be strict with yourself, but you've got
Yeah.
to just be kind to your partner and whoever you live with, and just educate them a little bit.
Yeah. No.
Sense of why you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I think also just setting yourself boundaries as well is very, very important. I went like again going back to my mate that came around on Friday in my home office. Like at the moment, I've got my standing desk, two monitors, laptop, and whatnot. But to my left, which you can't see right now, but I'm going to post a video of my office setup on YouTube soon. You've got my PlayStation and my like gaming monitor and stuff. So like the boundaries I've got to set myself and the discipline I've got to have as someone that loves to play video games. Most of my friends see my setup and go, how the fuck do you get any work done? Because I'd just be sat there and I'd be like, oh, go on, I'll just play a game of FIFA, or I'll play a little bit of Call of Duty or something. But like, no, because I've set myself boundaries that during the hours of work and stuff, that's my like decompress. Like once I'm completely, I've done everything, I've spoken to loads of people, then I'll just sit there and just play some games or whatever. But that's as a sort of going back to what you said earlier in the conversation about mindset and all the rest of it. Sometimes you've got to be disciplined and set yourself boundaries of this is when I do this or this is when I don't do that. Probably the same for you with you training your Ironman as well, right? Like you have to set boundaries with like recovery and be disciplined with your training and all that type of stuff, right?
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's actually that. Funnily enough, though, it does keep me on track with my work. It's kind of sets, because it's very routine, and I do it at a certain time of day, and I need to get it done to start
Mm,
my day. I know the reasons why I'm doing it, obviously, because I want to smash my Ironman, but I'm also doing it because it really sets me up for the day. It helps me with my motivation. It makes me feel really positive, and not I've won something for the day
mm-hmm.
already.
Yeah.
I know you concur with, because you love exercise as well. And then if I get that done in a certain time, you've just got to be really time efficient when you've got your own business, or you've got your own
Yeah.
small business with a team. You've got to be really um, disciplined with not going on social media and not getting distracted. And yes, there are days where you might get distracted, but generally you've just got to be really disciplined about your time and why you're doing what you're doing and the result you're going to get out of it. If you spend that time, if you
Mm-hmm.
block 2 hours out, you can get a lot done. If
Yeah.
you've got no distractions, you can get loads done in 2 hours, for example. So yeah, but I mean, it's all a learning game, isn't it?
It is.
No one's perfect. So if you have a shit week, look, just start again next week.
That honestly, that is the greatest bit of advice, really. Last week I had a client meeting. I'm not going to mention who it was with. Out of every single client meeting I've ever been to, I've always brought my laptop, always brought my rucksack. I've got like things in there to hand out and all the rest of it. I've got presentations on my laptop I can show. Never in the entirety of setting my business up have I ever had to pull my laptop out and show anyone anything. I had this meeting in front of a CRO, CSO, CEO. And I thought it was going to be individual meetings because it was set up by someone in the operations department. It wasn't. It was in their massive fucking giant boardroom in front of all three of them. And it was just me. And it was the one day I didn't bring my bloody laptop. And I was kicking myself for it. And then the CEO grilled into me, being like, so you brought nothing. You're not showing good, like, preparation. You're supposed to be teaching people how to do BD. And I'm like, oh, and I was like, even a business, because I'd just gone for a rebrand as well. So all of the stuff that I have is still Charles Kiriakou coaching. It's not infinite learning. So in my mind as well, it's just a complete, just like that. That could have completely just derailed my whole week, ruined me. I'm not going to lie. I was vacant to my wife and my friends on Monday night because I was trying to process how stupid it was. And on Tuesday, I was just like, oh, well, that absolutely sucked, but I can't change it now, but I can definitely learn from it. And that's when I messaged in that group chat of other founders and said, guys, I'm absolutely lost. I've gone for a rebrand. I've never done that before. I need to redesign my courses. Please help, with like a crying emoji. And three people, lo and behold, reached out. You're not unique, Charles. We've all been in this situation. We're here to help. And three people gave me loads of advice, and I've started afresh. Luckily, and again, you can attest to this, working in the recruitment industry for years, when you have a setback like that early on in your career, your whole week is completely fucking ruined. Sometimes your whole month completely fucking ruined. The more experience you get, well, I've realized at least, you do have down days. You do have the odd few. Maybe you might even have a down week, especially if it's a massive catastrophic thing. But actually, you can reframe these things and just let it take away maybe that half of a day. And then the next day, you're like, right, we need to just keep going. We need to learn from this and just work on a new strategy or something.
Yeah, there are always when something like that goes wrong, there are always ways to reflect back on it and unpick it and go, right, okay, well, yeah, I know why that went. Well, obviously, that was quite an obvious one, but with other things, it might not be so obvious as to why. And you can be pointing the finger at the other person sometimes, but actually, a lot of the time, you could have done it better.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, but you can only, as you say, you can only learn from that and dust yourself off, basically. If you lose
Exactly.
a placement or something like that, something like that's really painful, isn't it? If you've
Yeah.
ever that, it's just like, this is like my biggest placement. I've had that before. It's like my biggest placement ever, and it fell through.
Yeah. I mean, we've all been there, haven't we? We've all been there. It's painful as hell.
I once introduced myself as Steve to on a client pitch. I went to a client and it was for ongoing business. It was for retained, ongoing, all their vacancies. They were really growing, and I pitched up. This is when it was just me originally in my recruitment business, and I got introduced to. So the MD was actually called Steve, but the CEO was called Paul. And for some reason, just the CEO coming over and introduced, because he'd founded the business as well. And he came over and chatted to me, and I just went, "Oh, hi, I'm Steve."
Oh,
I'm like, "Oh my
oh
God."
God.
I've never forgotten my own name before, but I
That is
decided that
pain.
was a really good moment.
Oh God.
Own name, and actually, do you know what? He completely laughed it off, so it was absolutely fine. But yeah, I was a bit mortified. I was like, "Oh my God, ground, swallow me up."
Oh goodness. I remember there was this story when I joined a company that this guy he was just promoted to a manager, and the first person he ever managed was this girl called Catherine, who I'm good friends with. And apparently when she walked through the door, he went to go and get her coat and was just like, "Oh, please take your clothes off and put them there." And everyone in the office turned around and went, "What's that?" And he's like, a bald white guy, just went completely just like a plum and was like, I'm terribly sorry. I meant your coach, but it's all right. I'll keep my clothes on for the moment, mate. That was like the first interaction.
Brilliant. I love that.
Bad, isn't it? Bad. But listen, Helen, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. It's been an absolutely amazing episode. I feel like we could continue talking for hours and hours and hours. But as you know, the final question I finish every episode off with is, following this episode, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
So it is if you've got a problem, spend 98% of your time solving it and only 2% on the actual problem itself. So it just means tackle something head on, don't let it fester. if you notice something in your team that's wrong, or you're struggling with BD, which I know a lot of people out there are, especially female founders, just get on top of it. Right, okay, so let's not wallow in the problem. Let's tackle it. Let's get on top of the strategy. How could you improve? What do you need to do? What's the action plan? Put it into place now. Just move on, basically. So, but I
Nice.
love that, because it's a lot of people do spend a lot of time in the actual problem itself.
That's good advice. And that's advice I think anyone in any profession, and especially in recruitment, can take away. Because I've worked with too many people, unfortunately, that sit there and they just wallow in the problem, or they're complaining about the problem. And it's like, you always hear, especially the founders, the people that have set the business up, that are quite astute when it comes to that, are like, let's just focus on solutions. Like, where are the solutions? And I remember being a trainee consultant when my old MD would say that. They're like, right, there's a problem. Cool. What's the solution? Let's just focus our energy on that. Where the energy goes, or what's the Tony Robbins quote? Is the where the energy goes, the something flows. I can't remember what it is. I can't remember. You know the quote. It's doing my
I
head in.
know the quote. It's where positivity. It's where energy flows.
Something goes. It's like, it's where the energy flows. Something goes. Oh my god! This is so annoying. You know when you got the quote in your head and it just won't come out.
It's something like where positivity goes, energy flows. It's
Oh,
something like that.
it's gonna do my head in. But people will understand where I'm coming from. But anyway, that's a phenomenal answer, Helen. And like I said, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. I think that especially the first half an hour of that conversation, I find that topic so fascinating. But for people to reach out to you, firstly, what types of people would you like to reach out to you if people are listening and watching, and where can they reach out to you?
Yes, but it's been amazing to be on your podcast, and I can't wait to see how your podcast is going to grow, because I think it's going to be really big and global and all those sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, reach out to me on LinkedIn. So it's Helen Plumridge, Plumridge. My network, my client, if you like, are female founders of recruitment agencies. So it's from solopreneur up to sub 5 team. I've just launched a new Facebook group, which is very much about community. As I said earlier, it's all about sort of feeling like you've got somewhere to come as a hub for advice, learnings, questions, problems. There's no one else in there. So there's no sort of marketing people or software people or sales people. It is just female founders.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'd love people to link with me and join and be part of the community.
Amazing. Well, thank you again so much. I've really enjoyed it, and I think we definitely need more people like yourself, because, like I said, and I firmly stand by this. I think 2025, the amount of opportunities for men and for women, but speaking about women, the amount of opportunities that we have these days is just, there's so much more than what there was when my mum and my grandmother were growing up, right? But the fact that there are people like you that have gone out there and have a proven track record of setting up your own business, and we didn't even really get into the ins and outs of your own business, right? So that's for sure an episode for another day. But if you're ever stuck or worried, and maybe you don't have the confidence or the mindset, then definitely just reach out to someone like Helen. Like, when I set my business up, I can't speak from a female perspective, but I opened up about, I didn't have that much confidence. I purposely sought out other mentors and other people that were in a similar situation. And do you know what? Like I said, I've had so many other female solo entrepreneurs on the podcast that I've learned a tremendous amount from. So it's not just solely just the sexes and stuff, but I do appreciate that, when I do speak to solo female entrepreneurs, they will prefer to go and speak to another female, because there's various different stigmas and all the rest of it. There's nuances, basically, so it does make sense.
Yeah, I've been on the journey, and we didn't talk about my journey, but I have been on the journey. So I think it's that, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, Helen, we'll definitely, I'd love to have you back on, and we can chew the fat about various other things. But very conscious of time, so thank you very much for everyone for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe on YouTube or on Spotify and Apple as well. The podcast is growing, and by the time this comes out, I'm pretty sure we would have already done the Recruitment Agency Expo. But yeah, the podcast will be there, so stay tuned for the episodes there. I've got a very, some might say, a controversial guest that will be live at the podcast. And I've also just found out, apparently, that at the expo, they're going to be having some sort of audience for the podcast zone. So that'll be amazing. And the newsletter as well. 1,250 subscribers in February. So when this comes out, hopefully that's gone up. But you get the lowdown on all episodes that you've missed. So please tune into that, subscribe to that. But that's enough from us today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and until next time.